as a non-traditional student of jazz, let's say that, since, you know, what is the tradition of jazz? What do you see as an educator now, as someone who didn't go through that process that now you are a part of as being an educator? What do you see as being the biggest holes in our current state of jazz pedagogy?
Oh, that's a 5-hour answer you're asking for, because that's my jam right there. I'll be brief. Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. You know, first of all, it is an oral tradition, and if you're learning to play by theory, or if you're learning to play by reading chord changes, you are learning with a visual tradition, which is how we teach classical music. You know, so first of all, the attempt to fit a square peg into a round hole is what's happened trying to get traditional universities and conservatories to accept jazz as a curriculum. Has been a process generally of trying to make it look like classical curriculum so that it looks acceptable to non-jazz people. So most of the problems have come from that, to the point where there's generations of jazz musicians who don't quite understand that making a solo by using theoretical concepts over chords that you either see on a page or see on a page in your mind is not the same process as playing what you hear. And so many of our students don't even realize those are two different things. Of course, as a working musician, you need both skills, because somebody's going to shove a set of chord changes on your music stand and push the record button, and you're going to have to sound decent. So you need to know how to read changes, but it's not the same art form. And so that's the first place where it falls apart. The second place is where we separate people by ability level. And here's the first band, here's the second band, here's the third band. You're in the top combo, you're in the second combo. That's totally bogus and destroys the idea of the music being a communal experience, and it destroys the mentorship process. It robs the students of the ability to have that kind of experience. So to correct for these things that I see as glaring annoyances, you know, I'm on a soapbox all the time. So what we're doing here at the University of Colorado is every group is composed of doctoral students, master students, upperclassmen, underclassmen. That's how you make a group. Our big bands are made that way. Our combos are made that way. Also, the teachers play in the ensembles. They don't stand in front of the ensembles and critique them. So we learned by playing with more experienced players. We didn't learn by people telling us how to play and how not. You know, certainly they told me how not to play. I heard that. I'm still hearing that. But play with the students. Make everybody feel included all the time. The experienced players have to be playing with the inexperienced players and vice versa. Otherwise, the whole thing breaks down. So it's all about the ear. It's all about rhythm. And it's all about the cross-generational experience and the sharing. So that's the 5-hour answer into 3 minutes there.
Well, I would love to hear the 5-hour answer.
Well, I can tell you everything that's wrong. You know, I'm a great critic.
Yeah.
doing the things that are right is an hourly experiment.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's really a crucial thing to think about, whether it's a discussion of music or life in general. That we all tend to be really great critics.
Yeah.
But it's being willing to try to develop a solution, and not just. I think it's the humility of knowing that you may not know a better way, but you're sure as hell going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I used to tell my employees that, it's like, look, I don't want you to. I know that I've got problems here, in this school that I'm running. I don't want you to come in and complain about what's going wrong, unless you can also provide me with a potential solution to the problem. It doesn't mean that I have to accept it. It doesn't mean it's the right one, but I want you to get out of this mindset of always trying to find what's wrong, but I want you to trying to identify how can you problem solve.
I went to my fellow faculty members several years ago. I said, we absolutely have to stop making the students play these juries. This is not helping anybody. It's not fun. It's not fun for them. It's not fun for us. Turns the whole semester into this public school teaching to the test experience. Everybody's not coming from the same place at the same time. And they asked, well, what would you do instead? Just like you're saying. I would said jam sessions. So that's what we're doing. No more juries, lots of jam sessions.
That's awesome. I mean, it's because it's like you train someone, and that's my biggest beef with the educational system as a whole, is you're training someone to approach life in a way that is completely different than the real world.
Yeah.
If you're going to give somebody a skill, give them a skill, and if you're going to have to measure it, then measure it in terms of real world results. The juries, I mean, how many times, other than like if you're on the audition circuit, and you're playing auditions, trying to do the symphony, you're never going to do that.
Yeah.
You're never going to have to do that. You're going to have to play in a club. You're going to have to play with other musicians. You're going to have to, do all these different things. And even skills outside of that, outside the playing skills. I know a lot of the educators that I've talked to on this show, they talk about how they are incorporating more modern day skills, things like learning how to manage social media, how to utilize, electronic recording equipment, all the things that you're going to have to do as a working professional. These are things that you should be learning, not just, the regurgitation of the same old repertoire or, the old way of doing stuff. So I really commend you on just taking those steps forward.
I have my little pet presentation, and I actually gave this lecture at GEN, at the Jazz Education Conference several years ago, that the way, basically my thesis is this: people learn to play jazz very well before they learn to play jazz in school. Not to say we shouldn't be teaching jazz in school, but let's examine how people learn to play jazz and see if we can make school more like that. So the name of the presentation is The Traditional Jam Session as a Model for Jazz Education. So what happens in a good jam session? What doesn't happen? How do people learn in this environment? What works about this? And not just about having jam sessions, although that's definitely a part of the thing, about the value of jam sessions themselves, but what are the values that come from that style of learning, and how can we instill that more in our classes and less lecture test.
Yeah. That's very cool. That's very cool. I have to dive into that at some point and see what you have to say, because I think that's jamming, whether it's learning to play jazz or the way we learn to speak a language. You know, that's how we do it. It's the mentoring, it's the improvisation, it's being willing to put yourself out there, to be around people that have a higher skill level than you, and to learn from your mistakes. And I think so many of us are so afraid to make mistakes, and that a lot of that is the guilt lays on the more experienced people who sometimes have a tendency to make the younger or less experienced player feel insecure and inadequate, instead of encouraging them to do something.
My experience as a teenager, trying to go find people who knew jazz, like I said, that they weren't in the environment that was provided for me. So of course my first way I learned jazz was by arguing with bouncers. Trying to get them to let me in, or
right.
could you please go get one of the musicians and they could vouch for me, and could please, standing at the doorway to bars and things like this as a 16-year-old kid. But when I went to sit in with the experienced players, I wasn't good enough to be playing with them. They knew that. I knew that. They didn't say, "Get out of here, kid, and never come back." That's not what I got at all. I got the opposite. Oh, you're interested in learning this music? Okay, then. Well, you're with us now. We'll help. I mean, that's the tradition right there.